He finished the kitchen exactly how the client wanted. The drill stopped, the air still buzzing from its echo. The man still refused to pay, so he left something behind. The house smelled of new paint and quiet arrogance. Everything gleamed: marble, brass, glass. He'd spent weeks there, fixing things that weren't broken, redoing what was already perfect. And every time, the client hovered close, coffee in hand, pointing, judging. "That edge looks uneven. You call that straight?" He used to explain at first. Measurements, materials, process. But after the third week, he just nodded, kept working. That morning, the client stood at the doorway, polished shoes tapping against the tile. "So," he said, "you'll need to redo the grout lines. They're not symmetrical. I'll pay half now, the rest when it's fixed properly." Half. He looked at the man's reflection in the glossy fridge door. Expensive watch, phone already in hand. The kind of guy who measured people by invoices. "Sure," he said quietly. "Half's fine." The client seemed almost surprised by the lack of fight. "Good. Let's wrap this up then." He wiped his hands on a rag, folded it slowly, and placed it on the counter. Every movement deliberate, steady. His body calm, his mind somewhere else entirely. The drill whined softly as he packed it away. He noticed the echo, sharp, hollow. Somewhere near the backsplash, one tile sounded just a little off. A pocket of air behind it. He touched it lightly, testing the sound again. Tap. Clean. Empty. He stood there for a second, listening. Behind him, the client was still talking, something about receipts and touch-ups. The words blurred into a drone. He turned off the light over the sink. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Then he smiled once, small, controlled, and said, almost to himself, "Yeah, all finished." He left before the client could answer. The check lay on the counter like a bad joke. Half the amount, signature sharp and proud. He didn't even bother to pick it up right away. Just stood there, watching the light hit the paper, the ink still drying. Later that afternoon, he took it to the bank. The teller smiled too much, said, "Big project?" He just nodded. Something like that. The printer hummed as it spat out the receipt. The numbers looked smaller than they should. He stopped at a gas station on the way home, grabbed a coffee, and sat in his truck with the engine off. It was quiet except for the hum of the cooler behind the glass door and the faint rattle of tools in the back seat. His hands still smelled like grout and soap. He checked his phone. A few unread messages, an estimate request from another client, one text from his ex-wife about picking up their son this weekend. Ordinary things. Life still moving. But his mind stayed in that kitchen. That hollow sound behind the backsplash. It was such a small thing, maybe half an inch of air, but he couldn't stop hearing it. Tap. Clean. Empty. Like something waiting. He imagined the client in there tonight, showing off the space to whoever came over, talking about craftsmanship like he owned the word, bragging about the discount he'd managed to squeeze out. He didn't feel angry. Not anymore. That part had burned out somewhere between the fourth complaint and the fake smile. What stayed was something colder, quieter. At the hardware store the next morning, he bought extra tile adhesive and a small tube of sealant. Nothing special. Just enough for touch-ups, in case anyone asked. The cashier didn't even look up. Back at the job site, the house was empty. His footsteps echoed through the hall, sharp, alone. He still had the key. He always did until final inspection. He stood in that kitchen again. The light, the smell, everything too clean. He placed the bag on the counter, unzipped his lunchbox, and took out a small paper carton. 6 brown eggs. One cracked just slightly at the edge. He looked at it for a long time, then exhaled, slow, certain, and turned toward the backsplash. He laid out his tools like he always did, in a straight line along the counter, handles facing the same way. Routine made things simple, predictable, safe. The house was silent now. No client, no questions, No footsteps pacing behind him. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the thermostat. He could hear his own breath again. He turned on the small work light and crouched near the backsplash. His fingers traced the seam between tiles until he found the one that rang hollow. Tap, tap. There it was. He mixed a little adhesive, more out of habit than need. It wasn't really about the tile anymore. It was about the sound, that clean, empty space behind it. From the lunchbox, he took out the cracked egg. Warm from the truck, still slightly damp. He held it for a moment, thumb resting on the shell, feeling how fragile it was. How human. When it broke, the sound was soft, wet, almost polite. The smell came quick, faint, sweet, organic. He poured it gently into the hollow, the way you'd fill a small void no one would ever see. Then came the cement. He spread it smooth, careful not to leave air bubbles. Precision mattered. Always had. The last part, pressing the tile. He leaned his weight forward, hands steady. The click echoed sharper than he expected, almost metallic. It felt final. He cleaned up the edges, wiped down the counter, rinsed his tools. The rag he used had dried paint on it from another job, another house, another argument. When he packed up, he looked around the room one last time. Everything perfect. Symmetrical. Clean lines. Balanced light. Not a single trace of what had just happened. He closed the toolbox, turned off the lamp, and let the silence fill the space again. At the door, he hesitated, just long enough to hear that hum behind the walls, the one only he knew wasn't innocent anymore. Then he left the key on the counter. No note. No message. The door clicked behind him, quiet, final. It started about 3 weeks later. The homeowner called his cleaning service first. "It's probably something in the trash disposal," he said, waving his hand near the sink. They ran the water, scrubbed the drain, poured bleach, lemon, vinegar, the usual rituals of control. The smell stayed. Then came the plumber. 2 hours, a camera down the pipe, another bill. Nothing. Might be something dead in the walls, the plumber said, half joking. The homeowner didn't laugh. Each day, the scent grew sharper. Not strong, just wrong. Sweet, sour, impossible to ignore. It clung to the corners, hid behind perfection. Even the marble couldn't mask it. He stopped inviting people over. The smell made conversations awkward. "Maybe it's the paint," someone said once. New houses always smell strange. But this wasn't that. This was something alive once, now rotting. He opened windows, bought air purifiers, burned expensive candles. For a while, that helped. Then one morning, he woke up to find the odor stronger than ever, as if it had been waiting for quiet. The cleaning woman quit. Said she couldn't work there anymore. "The smell gets inside your clothes." He offered double. She said no. By the second month, he'd torn out part of the baseboard, then a section of drywall. Nothing. The frustration made his voice rougher, his face tighter. Neighbors stopped by less. He called the contractor once, just once, straight to voicemail. "Hey, listen," he said, trying to sound casual. "If you get a second, call me back. Something's off in here." The message went unanswered. That night, he sat in the dark kitchen, the only light coming from the refrigerator. He pressed his hands against the counter, breathing through his mouth. Still there. That faint, mocking scent. He whispered, "What the hell is it?" Somewhere behind the tiles, the answer was already gone, sealed, drying, perfect. By the time the contractor drove past the house again, summer had already burned the grass to a dull yellow. He hadn't meant to take that route. It just happened. Muscle memory, maybe. The windows were open. A dumpster sat in the driveway, half full of broken tile and drywall. Someone was replacing what he'd built. He parked across the street for a minute, engine idling. From where he sat, the kitchen looked smaller now. The shine was gone, the light duller, like the house had aged faster than it should have. He could almost hear it. That faint echo of a tile being pried off, that surprised grunt when the smell hit. The confusion, the swearing, the sudden understanding that money can't buy everything clean again. He sipped from his thermos. The coffee had gone cold. He didn't mind. A man stepped outside, younger, maybe a new contractor, carrying a box of tools. He waved at someone inside, called out something about airing it out. The words carried across the street, flat and ordinary. He thought about rolling down the window, saying something. Maybe a warning, maybe just a hello. But there was no need. The work was finished long ago. He glanced at the rearview mirror, his own eyes looking back, calm, steady. There was no thrill, no guilt, just balance. Traffic passed behind him. A truck rattled over a manhole cover, the sound crisp and hollow, just like that final tile. He started the engine. The radio clicked on mid-song, some classic rock station he didn't even like. The air smelled like dust and motor oil. Honest smells. As he turned the corner, the house slipped out of view. It would be fine again someday. New tile, new paint, another story to tell at dinner. But the silence he left inside it would never really go away. The last sound he remembered was that soft, perfect click. Even now, he could still hear it. Clean, final, and exactly right. Some silences don't fade. They just find new walls to live in.